Hey guys, sorry I haven't uploaded a review in a long while. I know it's been a while, but I've been busy with school, and there really haven't been that many movies that came out in August. I mean, what else was there to review? Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark or Angry Birds Movie 2? Actually, I did see Angry Birds, and it's actually not that bad. It's actually, if you're just looking for a fun waste of time, then yeah, it's actually not that bad. But anyways, the movie we're talking about today is probably one of the most anticipated films of the entire year, It Chapter 2. Now, It Chapter 2 is the sequel to It from 2017. It's directed by Muschietti, and it stars James McAvoy, Jessica Chastain, Bill Hader, Isaiah Mustafa, and a lot of other individuals. And it also happens to star Bill Skarsgård, once again reprising his role as Pennywise the Dancing Clown. The plot of the film is that 27 years after the events of the first It is 2016. The losers are now all grown adults living their own lives. Most of them forgetting the events of what happened in Derry, except for Mike, who stayed. And after a hate crime happens, and after suspicions that it has returned, Mike phones all the losers to come back to Derry so they can finally be able to stop Pennywise once and for all. Now, when it first came out in 1986, it was a very long book, about over 1,000 pages or so. And this isn't actually the first time the book has been adapted into something. Back in 1990, it was made into a two-part made-for-TV miniseries on ABC that ran for about 3 hours if you combine them all together. And in that, it pretty much was very scaled down because, for one thing, it was a TV budget. The other thing was that, it didn't have the advents of CGI and such. And it was also on primetime network, so you really couldn't show anything super gory in the book, for example. But yeah, with the movie, they're definitely able to get through a lot more ground. And very much like the second part of the miniseries, the second chapter of It is weaker than the first one. Not saying it's bad by any means. There's a lot of things to really enjoy about this film, but there are also a lot of things that really don't make a lot of sense about this movie and also really aren't that great. Now, what specifically? Well, first I want to talk about the positives. The cast does an incredible job. Both the adult losers and the kids still do a really good job. Bill Hader definitely did the best job out of all of them, considering the fact that, characterized for Richie, it definitely took a turn from the novel because the stuff that they have about Richie, which I'm not going to give away because of spoilers, they definitely do not include in the novel, but it is a nice touch. Bill Skarsgård, of course, is great as Pennywise the Dancing Clown. I also do really enjoy the fact that they actually did keep a lot of stuff to the novel. It is very faithful to the novel, but I do feel like that is both its strength and its weakness. Because this thing is nearly 3 hours long! To give you an idea about how long it was, I started the movie at a 1 o'clock showing, and when I came out, it was 4:05. That's how long it was, including the 15 or so minutes of previews, mind you. And honestly, I feel like the fact that there's a lot of stuff that could have been cut from this movie, because there's a lot of scenes that involve the losers going to their old, childhood places. There's a flashback that usually takes place about it scaring them, that it comes back again to be able to torment them again. With Beverly, when she came back to her old house, where she once lived with her father, she got a flashback to when she was a child and such, but then Mrs. Curse turned out to be another form that Pennywise took on in order to be able to scare her or whatever. And it's very similar, and I do feel like the fact that there's actually a lot of stuff from the novel that they could have cut from this, but people are going to make the argument, but if it's in the novel, it should be in the movie. But if you're worrying about making a movie, you're going to have to make compromises, and you're going to have to make changes. Very much how they made a lot of changes to the climax of the movie. Now, I am going to have this remain spoiler-free for a majority of it, but near the end, I am going to talk about some of the changes that they did make to the source material, and also mention some of the changes that both the 90s miniseries also made, but that's, like I said later in the video. But anyways, I do feel like the fact that there was a lot of stuff that probably could have been cut from this film, but I'm very thankful for the fact that it's at least this short, because apparently, from what I read from an article, there's a 4-hour-long director's cut version. I'm dead serious about that, too. But Yeah, this is a very long movie, and it can drag on a lot of stuff. And also, if you're not familiar with the source material of it, then there's going to be a lot of stuff in this movie that does not make sense. Like the ritual of Chud, that is a very complicated thing to explain, but I think the explanation they gave is well enough, but it is probably going to be confusing to those who aren't familiar with the source material. So yeah, I definitely, in case you're wondering, I actually do like the first It. I like both of these, but I do prefer the fact that the first It better because when, you see, what makes the first part about the miniseries and the first movie better than usually the second half is that when you're a kid, a lot of stuff can be able to scare you more than when you're an adult. Because when you're a kid, when you're having to deal with a killer clown, that's terrifying. But when you're an adult, you really shouldn't care about that kind of stuff. I got other things to worry about. I got taxes and bills to pay and stuff like that. And I have other fears too. Like some of the fears that the characters have really don't change all that much. Like for example, Eddie is still a germaphobe and ended up marrying a woman who was very similar to his wife. In fact, they were both played by the exact same actress as well. And when Eddie encounters the leper back in '89, guess what happens when he goes back to the drugstore to get his inhaler for the ritual of Chud? It's the leper. Again. And, of course, Bill is still facing guilt for what ended up happening with Georgie. What happens? He ends up encountering Georgie again. But, of course, it's Pennywise, of course, screwing with him. So, yeah, a lot of this movie can feel very repetitive, and a lot of it can be a bit confusing. And it's easily definitely not as good as the first part because, as I stated before, when you're a kid, things can be able to scare you a lot more than you're an adult. When you're an adult, you don't have time to worry about imaginary monsters or stuff like that. But I still think the fact that there is enough good stuff in here for you to enjoy. The cast was really good. There are some really decent scares here and there. There really are good setups for a couple of scares. And it really is a really good job at adapting the novel, but I do feel like the fact that it could have been cut way shorter, and I do feel like the fact that there also could have been a couple. What I'm trying to say is the fact that I feel like it was overlong and it was sometimes very confusing to follow, but overall I thought it was okay. So if I was going to give a score, I would give the first It's maybe an 8.5, and this I'm going to give a 7 out of 10. It's good, but I don't feel like the fact that it was as good as it could potentially be. Sorry. Now we're going to go into some of what it does right and what it does wrong in regards to the book. In the book, when it comes back, it's usually because a fellow gay citizen of Derry, Adrian, I'm forgetting what his last name was, Adrian Meadow or something like that, I don't know, he was attacked by a group of homophobes and bigots, and they beat him up and they pushed him off a bridge, and that's where Pennywise found him, and his boyfriend ends up finding him long enough to see Pennywise literally devour him, and man, that's definitely a way to start a movie and how to make you feel really uncomfortable. They actually also do make a change to Richie's character in this too, like when he goes to the old rundown movie theater to be able to collect one of those tokens from Street Fighter. He ends up getting a flashback to when he was playing with another kid, and he was asking, do you want to play? You want to play a little longer? I mean, if if that's okay, what do you want? And it's very obvious the fact that Richie was sort of kind of flirting with him a little bit, but then Henry Bowers and his group ended up overhearing him. They ridiculed him, of course, for that kind of stuff. And then afterwards, Richie is attacked by a giant Paul Bunyan statue, which was in the novel. And I'm pretty sure Stephen King personally requested that this scene be included in the novel as well. And also, I should mention the fact that the kids were also digitally de-aged for this movie. And sometimes the audio can feel a little weird, like the ADR feels a bit more. It does feel really weird, particularly when it came to Finn Wolfhard. It definitely felt a little weird because I'm pretty sure his voice actually got a little bit deeper and he got taller in the course of the 2 years that ended up happening between this movie and the first. But yeah, that's actually a big change that they made to Richie's character. And of course, they actually have Stanley does not come back, sadly, because in both the 90s miniseries and in the book, when Stanley learned that it came back, he immediately went upstairs to go kill himself. Whereas in the book, his wife has found him hacked to pieces. Both in this and the 90s miniseries, they find him with just his wrist slit, but he doesn't write it in giant blood letters like he does in both the novel and the miniseries. You just see him, he just sees his dead body with blood dripping, and that's it. And he also does give an explanation as to why he didn't return. And once again, the ending is different than the novel. In the novel, it had the group come together in order to be able to face it as a giant spider, and yeah, it was definitely a bit anticlimactic when that happened. So in this, they sort of came to a compromise with it's still Pennywise, but he's just in the form of he has a giant spider body, but he's still Pennywise the clown. And then eventually they begin to belittle Pennywise until he's just like this tiny little clown. They reach into him, pull his heart out, and then crush it Mortal Kombat style. And then as its cave begins to fall apart, the losers make it out okay, except for Eddie, who Pennywise ended up killing. And of course, supposedly the losers end up going to live happy lives, knowing the fact that it is destroyed. But also another part of the novel that they do manage to that they did change was that in the novel, after it is destroyed, Derry becomes flooded. But in this, Derry still remains, but it is no longer there. So yeah. So yeah, that was my review of It Chapter 2. I hope you guys enjoyed, and look forward to more reviews coming in the future. I have reviews planned for Rambo Last Blood, and potentially for the Brad Pitt space film Ad Astra as well. I'm also going to be doing more reviews of upcoming films like the Joaquin Phoenix Joker. I'm going to be doing a review of that. Doctor Sleep, which is the sequel to The Shining with Ewan McGregor, and just because of the fact that 2019 is sort of the year of Stephen King, because in April we had Pet Sematary, now we have It Chapter 2, and then Doctor Sleep coming in November. In fact, at the time we were recording this video, Warner Brothers released the second trailer for Doctor Sleep, the final trailer. But yeah, I am going to be planning on covering some other movies here and there. Like, maybe in the future for October, I might review Zombieland Double Tap, or maybe Jojo Rabbit, in which Taika Waititi plays Adolf Hitler. But then again, I don't know. I might not. Who knows? So I hope you guys enjoyed this review as always. So yeah. Hope you guys enjoyed, and stay gold.